Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video this year. Usually when I do my predictions of who are the potential winners of Eurovision, there tends to be a big list of countries, at least 6 or 7, but this year I genuinely believe we are heading towards a 2-horse race in the competition. I think there are 2 countries this year, either one of them going to be holding the trophy by the end of the contest. So you can guess which countries I'm going to be talking about because it's all everyone's been talking about this season, these 2 countries. The first one I'm going to talk about is the country that is coming for the record number of wins at Eurovision. They have an incredible back catalogue of songs, a really great record, especially in the 1990s. It's Ireland, Wild Youth with We Are One. I'm obviously joking. In what world, guys? In what world? The actual country that I'm going to put first, player 1 on my board, is Finland. It's Käärijä with Cha Cha Cha. Now Käärijä has been climbing in the odds since his first rehearsal footage came out, because they've gone for kind of an elevated version of what they did at UMK. They've made everything seem much bigger, brighter and better, and that is the perfect recipe for success. It's been climbing in the odds so much where today it currently stands at 23%. And of course, the opponent, the entry which has been leading in the odds this year for a very long time. She won Eurovision in 2012 and she's coming back for her second win. Loreen. It's not Ireland, don't worry. Player 2 on the board, Loreen with Tattoo. I'm gonna have to stab through her head there. So Loreen has been sitting really comfortably in the odds at around 46% for the past couple of days. But since Käärijä's rehearsal has come out, we've seen the footage and her rehearsal footage has come out. There's been a slight switch over in the odds, so her odds have been coming down and his odds have been going up. So right now Sweden are at about 42%. They've dropped around 4% in one day, whilst Käärijä has climbed up about 6%. So that is a very interesting thing to see. We're starting to get momentum with Käärijä's entry, and Loreen's has been losing momentum because of the rehearsal footage. Her staging looks great. They were able to bring this really interesting ceiling effect despite the rules, I think, saying that they can't hang anything from the ceiling. They've managed to kind of work their way around that, but the box is a lot smaller, so everything has been scaled down a little bit, whilst Käärijä's has been scaled up. So I think there's a sort of disconnect between what we saw in the national finals for Loreen and for Käärijä. This has been gaining momentum, this has been losing momentum, which is really interesting, but we'll see obviously what happens on the night when we get the proper camera angles. So 42%, which, to be fair, is an incredible odd in the first place to have before you even have like the proper rehearsal footage. It's really good, it's really good stuff. So what I'm going to talk about first actually is general threats to these 2 entries from winning, because obviously they are a threat to each other in their own right. You know, she'll stop Käärijä from winning and he'll stop Loreen from winning. But there's also external factors, I think, which I need to talk about first. And then I'm going to talk about internal factors, so the other contestants that are each individually posing threats to these 2 from winning the contest. And you're going to kind of see which countries, I guess, Käärijä wants to do well in a certain vote and which countries that Loreen wants to do well, vice versa. So the first thing I'm going to talk about here is the biggest threat to Loreen this year. Loreen's won already, let someone else win. So Loreen, her biggest threat, she's won already. We've seen this happen once before with Ireland. Ireland have won twice in the 80s with Johnny Logan. Arguably what happened with Ireland is Johnny Logan won with a great song in the early 80s, and then he came back in 87 and he won with what I think is an even better song. With Loreen, on the other hand, and this is where the other point comes in, it's Euphoria Part 2, quote unquote. So, is this going to be seen by the general public and the juries as Part 2 to Euphoria? No growth, no development in sound. Where's the journey? that could be a big threat to Loreen, because they might see this as, well, she's come back, she's won already, but she has maybe perhaps plateaued a little bit. That could be what happens. We could get a response like that from both the public and the juries. So those are really, really big threats to Loreen this year. She's a familiar face. We saw Alexander Rybak come back in 2018 with an arguably worse song. And I mean, his song was way, 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 way worse. So it's not quite comparable, because Loreen's song is great this year. But Euphoria was on a different level, I think. But some people disagree and they think it's the other way round. So we'll see what happens with that. But she's a familiar face. And sometimes I think people want to root for the underdog. People want to give someone who hasn't won an opportunity to win, rather than the person that's won already. So we'll see how the general public and the juries react to that concept in general. So now let's talk about some threats that Käärijä faces this year. And the first one is, it's in Finnish. So apart from the sentence cha-cha-cha and occasionally pina colada, you can read from the lyrics in English, everything else is in Finnish. And it's whether the audience this year can actually sit back, listen to this and understand the meaning of it. And that's a really tricky thing to do, because Finnish isn't a widely spoken language. Now, I really admire that this is in Finnish, because it's nice that we have native language entries at Eurovision. But will people tuning in on the night be able to listen to this and think, oh, I really get the meaning of this and I really vibe it with it? That's the issue. So it's whether people can look past that and even beforehand look up the meaning. Can the commentators communicate the meaning of the song, a little bit of context before he comes on and performs, set the scene, and then it enables people to connect with this song? So that is the key threat I think he's facing. And the second one he's facing is, this won't chart. There is a risk that this song is not very chart friendly. It moves through lots of different genres and it's got some interesting musical elements. But if you think about what's radio friendly right now in the charts, is that radio friendly? Loreen feels to me more radio friendly than Käärijä. Käärijä is much more Schlager pop, rap, rock, very polarizing genres, and it will polarize a lot of people when they listen to this. And we've seen in kind of local reactions to this, hearing this for the first time, and they couldn't stand the sound of this song, unfortunately. Whilst this one was getting a lot more love because it's more palatable. So these are the biggest threats that Käärijä faces right now. Is it chart friendly? Will this appeal to a wide range of demographics, ages, countries? And also, because it's in Finnish, will people understand the meaning of it? Will the visuals be enough for people to connect with this song? That is a key issue. So next, the internal threats that these two face, and they kind of counteract a little bit. So the first one is Loreen's biggest threat this year, and historically Sweden's biggest threat this year, is the televote. Obviously last year with Cornelia Jacobs, she did slightly better in the televote than Sweden had been doing in the past couple of years, because I think the song was a bit more raw. You could get down onto the level of the song, whilst previous Swedish entries have been very slick and polished and perfect, and perhaps that's not what the general public is looking for. They want something that they can relate to. Cornelia brought that. Loreen perhaps is bringing something similar this year, but there's also a level of this is very, very perfect sounding and looking, and everything has been timed perfectly. Whilst with this is more imperfect and it's unique and it's got this sort of charm about it, which this one doesn't have, which the general public might connect with more. So it's a big threat. She could easily finish in the top 3 of the jury vote, but top 3 of the televote, that is a more of a difficult thing to achieve, given Sweden's track record, but also because of these things I've said here already. Loreen's won already, let someone else win. This is Euphoria Part 2. Will people pick up the phone and vote for this, or will they vote for an underdog? That's the key thing. And equally, Finland's biggest threat here is with the juries, because, like I said, it's not radio friendly particularly. He doesn't sing an awful lot in this, and when he does sing, the vocals are good, but they're not the strongest of the competition, whilst Loreen is bringing some of the strongest vocals of the competition. So the thing is, Käärijä might at face value struggle with the jury votes this year, and I think a lot of people kind of picked up on that point. I don't think I'm saying anything particularly new or innovative here, but what I did see was that the juries each year score songs on these 4 particular criteria. So it's on vocals and vocal capacity, the stage performance itself, the composition, and the overall impression of the song. Now I think Karia can tick at least 3 of these boxes. So I would say a juror would score him up for stage performance because he does have a good stage presence and the staging concept they're bringing is very unique. Composition, a juror, musical professional, should look at this entry and see the really interesting musical details in it. I'm obviously a musician myself and I do have my own personal tastes and likes and dislikes, but I would think if I was on this jury, I would still look at this song and think there is some interesting musical elements in here. It's creative, it changes genre, it has an interesting musical journey. There's things they do with the synths and the guitars and this kind of development of ideas which are really, really interesting, and they keep the momentum of the song flowing. So I would give him a tick for composition for sure. And then overall impression, this is so memorable. The colour scheme, the lighting, the choices they've made with the staging, it's very memorable and it has a really good first impression. This evokes strong emotions from people. You either absolutely love it or you cannot stand it, and that is a really good thing about a song when it evokes strong emotions. So I would give that a tick as well. And then for vocal capacity, well, if you think about vocals, are you judging Karia on his ability to rap or sing or both? Because I would be judging him on both, because his rapping is fast, it's energetic, he's got good flow, he keeps up with the music really well, he enunciates, he's got good diction. I think his rapping style is also very interesting, it sounds good, tone. I would definitely score him at least a half up for the rap, and the singing, he is backed up by some backing vocals and some auto-tune, so I would not give him a point for that. So that's ticking about 3.5 boxes on here. So I do think there's some redeeming qualities. Whilst with Sweden, for instance, if you're thinking about these 4 criteria, yeah, you would, for instance, tick vocals and vocal capacity for sure. Stage performance, you would absolutely tick that because they're bringing something really interesting with the staging, with the light box effect, with her kind of being sandwiched in a panini press in a way. Composition, however, composition and uniqueness of the song, I don't know if I would score that personally, because I do think this song, going back to the Euphoria Part 2 comment, does this song feel like it's progressed, it's unique? I wouldn't say that. I think it borrows from other genres. I think it definitely lends itself to previous songs at Eurovision as well. So if I was a juror, would I look at this and think this is innovative and new and fresh? No, I think the staging is, and I think her costume is for sure, but maybe not the composition. So that knocks her back a bit, but overall impression definitely gets a tick because the stage performance and the way this looks is so great. So they're kind of even-footed, I think, with juries. That's my personal opinion. 3.5 each. 3.5 out of 4. So they both tick in those boxes. That's the thing. It's interesting. So that's why I'm thinking this is a 2-horse race. It's not a runaway winner. She's got competition here and we can't write him off with the juries. I do think this will get some jury love. I hope. And now what I'm going to do is talk about more of the internal threats that they have from other contestants. So the first threat that I want to talk about, and I think is Lorene's biggest threat with the juries, is Blanca Paloma from Spain. Now I know some people think that this has a potential to win, but the problem is you've got to finish in kind of the top 5 of both jury and televote. Now I see this finishing in at least the top 5 with the juries, but televoters, I'm not so sure, because like I said, it evokes a strong reaction, but will people be able to relate to this as strongly as a song like Karia or some other songs that I'm going to mention later? I'm not entirely sure. So I have put this here as a big threat to Lorene in terms of the jury score. She could easily hoover up a lot of jury points away from Lorene because of the vocal performance, the simplicity, the control that she has in her voice, her pronunciation, her ability to kind of like command the camera as well. I think Loreen this year, and this is the biggest difference on 2012, she's got a lot of competition vocally and presentationally, and that is something she didn't really have in 2012. So this is why it's a bit more interesting. This is why I don't agree with the betting odds being so inflated in favour of Loreen, because I do think she's got competition vocally and competition presentationally and also musically in other aspects. And now I'm going to talk about a televote threat to Karia. So this, Austria, Taya and Selena with Who the Hell is Edgar. Similarly, we got cha-cha-cha and po-po-po. So they've gone for these kind of monosyllabic words that everyone can sing no matter what language you speak. You pick it up so easily. So they are kind of in direct competition in terms of, if you think about it, songs that are memorable, transferable and accessible to everyone. The only difference is this is slightly more Schlager pop and this is slightly more EDM. So that's the only difference, but I think they've got a fan base for both. But whether they'll cancel each other out in the televote is a different question. But I do think he needs to watch out for Austria and how many points they're getting and how many points they're potentially taking from him as well. The next one I want to talk about, a big threat I think to Loreen as well, in both the televote and the jury mark, is Lazara. So Lazara for France has been climbing the odds gradually over the past couple of days, and I think that's a really interesting position to be in. Obviously it's the battle of the Moroccans as well. The Moroccans have come to slay this year at Eurovision. But yeah, Lazara has got something a bit more disco-y, but I am quite convinced that the vocals are going to be strong. Now she's got something kind of right in the middle of these two, televote friendly and jury friendly, but it's whether I think the televoters go big for this one. That's the key thing. And how many televote points are they taking away from Loreen? That is a really, really big question. Do you think she's going to play a significant role in the results and which way it's going to swing towards either of these ones? So basically, if Lazara does really well in the juries, I think she might be a massive threat to Loreen's overall score and her ability to get a good margin over Karia for them when the televote results come in, basically. So watch out for what Lazara does in the results. And now, one that we must not neglect when thinking about potential winners and potential televote winners is Ukraine. Last year, Ukraine got over 400 points in the televote, which is something we have not seen before at Eurovision. There was a lot of solidarity and coming together to support Ukraine last year, and I do expect there to be more solidarity this year. Maybe not in the 400s, but I'm expecting, you know, triple digits for Ukraine. And it's whether this will have a detrimental effect on Karia, because I do expect him to have a bigger televote score than a jury score. And it's whether people are giving more points, are picking up the phone more for Karia or for Dvorchi. That is the key thing. I don't expect Dvorchi to be making a dent in the jury marks this year. As much as I like this song, and I do think it's got musically strong elements to it, I think there's a lot of competition with juries right now with the females, and this might slip through maybe in mid-table with the jury. So I'm not expecting this to dent Loreen too much, but it's a big threat for Karia, definitely. We have to keep an eye on how this one does, because if the televote really goes big for Ukraine again this year, he might not get enough points to then, you know, overtake Loreen, basically. That is the key thing. So just to clarify, these are definitely jury threats here. So keep an eye out for Lazara and Blanca Paloma. And then televote threats for Karia. Definitely keep an eye out for Austria and for Ukraine. So now what I'm going to talk about is a country that I think has a potential to threaten both in terms of the juries and the televote, and that is Israel. This one I do think is a dark horse, and after seeing her rehearsal footage yesterday, I do think she has a potential to do really well with the juries. Firstly, it is more of a pop song and it is in direct competition in terms of the genre with Loreen, but also the stage show she's bringing, these colours, this really well choreographed vibe and this really great dance break as well. I do think she's threatening Karia a little bit with the televote, so she is a little bit of a dark horse that they should be worried about in both sides of here, and we need to keep an eye on like how this one actually does in the end. I do expect this to come top 10, but it's whether her performance is so incredibly impressive and just kind of like blows other performances around her out the water. Whether she will take enough points away from either of these two to get a good margin to win, basically. So now what I'm going to do is talk about the kind of more minor threats to these two. So I don't see these making a massive dent in either half of the results for Karia or for Loreen, but I do think we need to consider these countries. So the first one is Croatia. So Croatia is another televote magnet, potentially. It's kind of that Schlager side as well, so it's in direct competition with the genre and the sound of Karia's towards the latter half of the song. So we need to keep an eye out for this one. This one is a kind of make or break. It could not qualify, but it could also go through. It's whether the general public really get on board with this. It's very polarizing, it's interesting, and it's whether people understand what the song's about and if they like it. So I do think we need to keep an eye on this and see how it does, and we can't ignore it. I've called this one a quirky threat because I do think in terms of the quirky look that Karia is bringing this year, Croatia are also bringing a similar vibe and could slightly cancel each other out there. And then also these next two here, I think, are vocal range threats to Loreen. Now hear me out, I have mentioned this one before in my top 37 video, but I do think these two countries, both Baltics, are bringing ballads with a similar vocal range to Loreen that potentially vocal coaches and jurors who understand music might pick up on the fact that these two here, Alika from Estonia and Monika Linkite from Lithuania, have a stronger vocal range for the notes they are singing in the chorus than Loreen. Now hear me out here, Loreen is an absolutely amazing singer and she is so good at control. But what happens in the chorus of Tattoo is the first half of each sentence has more of a closed mouth vowel sound. So no, I don't care about the, and then pain is more open mouthed. So she kind of strains a bit when she says, no, I don't care about the, but then the vocal just sounds so lush and velvety when she says pain and rain. That really works well, but she strains a bit and sometimes there's a few cracks when she sings, no, I don't care about the, that part, because all I want is to be, and then love sounds really nice. Whilst Monika Linkite, for instance, is singing the same notes in a very similar range, but she's not cracking, she's not wavering, the control is there. And it's where the kind of people who have a bit of vocal coach experience or knowledge can notice those two things. Because if I was a juror and I was looking at vocals for that checkbox, I'd be looking at, okay, who's singing in a similar key, whose vocal ranges are similar, who's out singing who, and I'd look at Alika and her ability to sustain the C5 note and Loreen's ability to sustain a B4 note, which is the note just below. They both have a really strong ability to sustain, but when Loreen sings the note above, similar to Alika, she's starting to crack whilst Alika isn't, and Monika isn't either. So we need to keep an eye on these as well. And it's a very small threat, I think, because some people don't even think these could qualify from the semi-final. But I do think there'll be a few people in the musical expert side of the juries that might notice that. Plus they're ballads as well. Ballads are probably going to be few and far between this year in the final. And Loreen's got a kind of hybrid of a ballad and a pop song. It's a somewhere in between. So she's going to have threats from, obviously, France, who have more of an upbeat song. And Spain also with a kind of upbeat but more melancholy style song. And then these two ballads. So she's got these kind of direct threats coming from the different genres as well. It's interesting. So these are vocal range threats, which we must not write off. Because if these two qualify, I'm expecting Alika to finish in the top 10 of the jury vote for sure. And potentially Monika getting up there in the top 15. If they're getting kind of 7 points, 8 points, 6 points, maybe even 10 points, and then someone might give Loreen 4 points, you know, there's a kind of potential to be stealing just here and there a couple of points. And because I do think it's such a close kind of battle between the two, every point really matters in this case. So there you go. If you were to ask me who I think's gonna win, I couldn't tell you. I'm not here to tell you who I think's gonna win, because I do that the day before the final. When I've seen the rehearsal footage, when I've seen the semi-finals, when I've seen everything, and I'm a little bit more kind of clued up about what's going on. This is just a broad analysis right now. 42% in the odds, 23%. If you were a betting man, I would go for this one to make more money, but I don't like betting anyway. But obviously the betting odds are trying to tell us that this one is the strongest favourite to win. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting one. And I'm just going to put Ireland here as well, just so they're not left out. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for watching my video. Let me know what you think, obviously. Do you like this style? It's kind of like DCI Dork detective. She thinks the murder weapon is stashed here. I don't know. But let me know what you think, obviously. And yeah, stay tuned for more content coming soon. And I'll be reacting to the rehearsal clips when they eventually come out, the second rehearsals, so you can see what it's going to look like on TV. And I'll give you my updated qualifier predictions as well. So stay tuned for more, and I'll see you soon. Bye. You can see in all its glory.